The silent mafia heiress had never spoken a single word. Not to doctors, not to nannies, not even to the father who would burn New Orleans to the ground just to keep her safe. But on a rain-soaked night inside a candlelit restaurant, she pointed at a tired waitress with wet shoes, unpaid rent, and grief tucked behind her smile and whispered one word that froze every dangerous man in the room. Mama. Why would a child with no voice choose a stranger? This is not just a love story. It is a story about buried truth, stolen motherhood, a dead wife's secret, and the kind of pain money cannot protect you from. Stay until the end, because one little girl's first word will expose a lie powerful men killed to hide. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. That one word followed Mia Hart all the way out of the lantern house. It followed her through the service hallway, where the floor smelled like bleach and spilled wine. It followed her past the kitchen, past the cooks shouting over clanging pans, past the back door that opened into an alley slick with rain. It followed her beneath the yellow security light where steam rose from the pavement and the French Quarter hummed like it was keeping secrets. Mama. Mia stood beside the dumpsters with her coat pulled tight around her ribs and stared at the black card in her hand. Dominic Voss. No title, no company name, no address. Just a phone number printed in small silver letters. Men like him did not need explanations. Power explained itself the moment a room went quiet. Mia turned the card over as if the blank back might offer some ordinary reason why the most feared man in New Orleans had handed her his number after his silent daughter called her mother. Nothing appeared. Just black paper, cold rain, and the strange feeling that her life had been touched by something too large to name. The kitchen door opened behind her. A dishwasher stepped out carrying a trash bag. He saw Mia's face, then saw the card, then decided he did not need to know anything else. He tossed the bag into the dumpster and went back inside without a word. Smart man. Mia shoved the card into the front pocket of her bag and walked toward the streetcar stop. New Orleans after midnight did not sleep. It sweated, whispered, and watched. Rain crawled down the iron balconies. Jazz drifted from a bar 2 streets over, soft and sad, beneath the sound of tires hissing over wet pavement. A man in a Saints hoodie smoked under a broken awning. A woman in gold heels carried them in one hand and walked barefoot through the rain like the city had already taken what it wanted from her. Mia had $12 in cash tips a student account that looked more like a warning than a balance, and a rent notice folded so many times the paper had gone soft at the edges. Usually those numbers shouted at her. Rent, groceries, tuition, phone bill, bus fare, coffee if she wanted to stay alive through morning class. Tonight none of them were louder than Ella Voss's voice. Mama. At the streetcar stop, Mia stood beneath the green metal shelter with rain misting sideways across her shoes. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Loose brown hair slipping from its clip. Blue-gray eyes ringed with exhaustion. A face still young enough to be called pretty by strangers and tired enough not to care. 25 years old, and already too good at pretending she was fine. Her phone buzzed. Piper. You alive, or do I need to start checking hospitals? Mia almost smiled. Alive, weird night? The reply came fast. Restaurant weird, or New Orleans weird? Mia looked down the shining street. Both. The streetcar arrived with a groan of metal and light. Mia climbed aboard and sat near the back where the windows were fogged, and the seats smelled faintly of raincoats and old perfume. As the city slid by, she leaned her head against the cold glass and tried not to think about Dominic Voss's face. That was what disturbed her most. Not the bodyguards. Not the way the private room had gone silent. Not even the fact that a child who had never spoken had pointed at her and said, "Mama." It was Dominic. For 1 second, the man had looked shattered. Not weak. Never weak. Something deeper. Something more dangerous. Hope had entered his face like a blade. Mia had seen that look before, though never on a man like him. She had seen it in parents waiting outside emergency rooms, in children at shelters who watched the door every time it opened. In herself years ago before she learned not to expect the world to give back what it had taken. Dominic Voss had looked afraid of wanting something. By the time Mia reached Bywater, the rain had thinned to mist. Her apartment sat above a closed laundromat with faded blue letters peeling from the window. The building was narrow, old, and stubborn. The front door stuck when the air got wet, which in New Orleans meant almost always. The stairs complained under every step. Inside warmth hit her first, then the smell of burnt toast. Piper Lane sat cross-legged on the couch in faded nursing scrubs eating cereal from a mixing bowl, while a crime documentary flickered on mute. Her dark curls were piled on top of her head, and a yellow highlighter was tucked behind one ear like a cigarette. She looked Mia up and down. "You look like you served dinner to the devil." Mia dropped her bag onto the kitchen chair. "Close. Did he tip?" "He tipped fine." Piper lowered the spoon. That was not the important part of that sentence. Mia pulled off her wet coat and stood there for a moment, too tired to decide whether to laugh, cry, or lie down on the floor. "A little girl called me Mama tonight." Piper blinked. That is either adorable or the beginning of a horror movie. "She's almost 2. Her father said she has never spoken before." The humor left Piper's face. "Never." Mia shook her head. "Not one word." Piper set the bowl on the coffee table. "Sit down." Mia sat. The apartment was barely big enough for 2 women and their separate versions of exhaustion. Nursing flashcards covered the table. Mia's child psychology textbook lay open beside a chipped mug with cold coffee in it. The radiator knocked like it had something to prove. A laundry basket overflowed in the corner, and both women had been pretending not to see it for 4 days. It was small, it was messy, it was ordinary. Mia suddenly wanted to hold on to every inch of it. She told Piper everything. The lantern house, the private room, the men in dark suits, the little girl in the pale dress. Dominic's voice low and controlled, the spoon hitting the floor. Ella pointing at her. Mama. The way the whole room stopped breathing. The black card. When Mia said Dominic's name, Piper went still. "Wait, Dominic Voss." Mia frowned. "You know him." Piper gave her the look she usually reserved for patients in her training program who claimed they had no idea how a household object ended up somewhere it should not have been. "Mia, everybody knows Dominic Voss." "I don't." "That's because you work study sleep 4 hours and think grocery coupons count as a social life." Accurate but rude. Piper leaned forward. "Officially, he owns Voss Maritime private security firms, river warehouses, construction contracts, and enough real estate along the Mississippi to make politicians smile in public and sweat in private." Mia looked toward her bag. "And unofficially. Unofficially, people stop talking when his name enters a room." Mia was quiet. Piper softened just a little. "His wife died, didn't she?" Mia nodded. "Celeste Voss. After childbirth." Piper's expression shifted again, less warning now, more sorrow. "That poor baby." "Ella." "What?" "Her name is Ella." Piper studied Mia's face. "Oh no." "What? You already care." Mia stood and went to the sink. The tap rattled when she turned it on. She filled a glass with water and drank half before answering. She was scared. Lots of people are scared. She looked at me like she knew me. Piper's voice lowered. "That does not make Dominic Voss less dangerous." "No," Mia said softly, "but it makes Ella lonely." Piper sighed. There it was. The one place Mia was always easiest to reach. Children in impossible situations. Mia hated that Piper knew it. She hated even more that Piper was right. She dried her hands on a dish towel and pulled the black card from her bag. She placed it on the kitchen table between them. Piper stared at it like it might bleed. "No title," Piper said. Apparently, terrifying men prefer minimalist branding. Piper picked it up by one corner. "You should throw this away." Mia reached for it before she could stop herself. Piper noticed. Mia tucked the card under her textbook. She said her first word. "That is unfair." "What is?" "You making this about the baby because you know I cannot argue with the baby." Mia gave her a tired smile. "Then don't." Piper pointed toward the thin curtain that divided their sleeping spaces. Go to bed before you start romanticizing organized crime. I'm not romanticizing anything. You came home glowing and traumatized. That's just restaurant lighting. Piper stood and carried her cereal bowl to the sink. For a second, the room was only rain against the window and the radiator ticking beneath it. Mia. What? Be careful. Mia nodded once. I know. But that was the problem. She did not know. She knew rent notices and cheap coffee. She knew how to stretch soup for 3 meals. She knew how to smile when customers called her sweetheart like it was a tip. She knew how to read fear in a child within 5 seconds. She knew grief. She knew hunger. She knew how to keep moving because stopping cost money. She did not know what to do with a silent little girl who had reached for her like memory. She did not know what to do with Dominic Voss. Sleep came badly. When it finally took her, it pulled her backward. She was 7 again, standing in a hospital hallway under lights too bright to be kind. Her sneakers were untied. Her hands were sticky from a candy a nurse had given her. A police officer knelt in front of her saying words Mia could not understand because her grandmother was walking toward her with tears on her face. Miriam Hart did not cry often. She was a nurse. She believed in clean sheets, warm soup, firm instructions, and not scaring children unless the building was on fire. But that night Miriam knelt in front of Mia and gathered her into arms that smelled like lavender soap and peppermint tea. Your mama and daddy loved you all the way, baby Miriam whispered. All the way. After that, Miriam became home. A narrow apartment off St. Claude Avenue. Hospital shoes by the door. Peppermint tea on the stove. A calendar full of double shifts. A woman who came home bone-tired and still checked Mia's homework before taking off her coat. Miriam used to say, "Stay soft, baby. Just don't be easy to break." Mia woke before dawn with her heart pounding and Ella's voice tangled in the dream. Mama. By 8:30, she was on campus with bad coffee burning her tongue and a scarf wrapped high around her throat. Delgado Community College rose out of the gray morning in concrete and glass full of students moving fast with backpacks, earbuds, and private emergencies. Mia sat in child development class with her notebook open, but her pen barely moved. Professor Ellis paced in front of the room, silver glasses flashing under the lights. Children do not always attach to the person adults expect, she said. Safety is not a title. It is a pattern, tone, rhythm, scent, body language, emotional regulation. A child may recognize safety before the adult world has language for it. Mia looked up. Her pen moved. Children recognize safety before words. The sentence sat in the margin like it had been waiting for her. After class, Mia walked to the library and told herself she was only going to print an assignment. Instead, she sat at a public computer and typed Dominic Voss into the search bar. The results came fast. Voss Maritime expands Gulf Coast shipping operations. Dominic Voss donates $4 million to Children's Hospital Wing. Federal inquiry into port labor violence ends without charges. Voss Security awarded private dock contract. Businessman Dominic Voss declines comment after riverfront shooting. There were photos. Dominic at ribbon cuttings. Dominic beside mayors. Dominic at charity galas under chandeliers, expression unreadable. Dominic leaving a courthouse surrounded by cameras and men who looked like they had forgotten how to blink. Then Mia found the article about Celeste Voss. Celeste Voss, wife of New Orleans businessman Dominic Voss, dies following childbirth complications. The statement was short, polished, and cold in the way rich grief often sounded after lawyers touched it. Celeste had been 31. She had died at St. Agnes Medical Center after the birth of her daughter. The family requested privacy. No further comment. The photo attached to the article made Mia stop. Celeste stood beside Dominic in a cream dress, one hand resting over her pregnant belly. She was beautiful, but not in a distant way. Her smile was warm, almost mischievous. Her other hand touched Dominic's sleeve, and Dominic was looking at her instead of the camera. That was what hurt. He had looked at Celeste like the world had quieted. Mia closed the browser. "This is none of my business," she whispered. The sentence did not land. At 11, she tied on her apron at Gigi's diner. Gigi's sat on a corner near Magazine Street, wedged between a florist and a hardware store with sun-faded signs in the window. It smelled permanently of bacon grease, chicory coffee, cinnamon, and old vinyl booths. The floor tiles were cracked. The bell over the door stuck when it rained. There was always one man at the counter reading a newspaper like the entire internet had personally offended him. Georgia Malone ran the place like a benevolent dictator. Everyone called her Gigi, but only after she decided they had earned the right. She was in her 60s, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and capable of making grown men apologize to ketchup bottles. Mia was refilling sugar caddies when Gigi narrowed her eyes. "You look haunted." "I got 4 hours of sleep." "That's not haunted. That's normal poor." "Thank you for the distinction." Gigi leaned one hip against the counter. "You eat today." "I had coffee." "That is not food. It has emotional value. Debt has emotional value too. Doesn't mean I want it for lunch." The lunch rush hit hard. Office workers, construction crews, 2 mothers with strollers, a delivery driver eating pancakes like he had fought a war to reach them. Mia moved through it the way she always did, with speed warmth and just enough humor to keep people from seeing how tired she was. She had just set a turkey club at table 6 when the bell over the door rang. The diner changed, not dramatically. Gigi's customers were too proud and too hungry to go silent all at once. But conversations thinned. Forks slowed. The man with the newspaper lowered it just enough to see over the edge. Dominic Voss stood inside the door. Dark coat, black suit, rain on his shoulders. Ella on one arm in a soft pink hat. A black SUV waited outside at the curb. One man remained by the door. Another stood near the window, pretending not to scan every face in the room. Gigi looked at Dominic, then at Mia. "Well," she said quietly, "that explains haunted." Mia's pulse jumped. Dominic's eyes found hers immediately. Ella followed his gaze. The child's whole face changed. "Mama." The word cut through the diner. Softer than last night, but somehow deeper, because this was Mia's world. Cracked booths, coffee rings, Gigi watching with one hand on her hip. Ordinary people holding their breath around something extraordinary. Ella reached for her. Mia stood frozen for half a second. Gigi gave her a look. "Don't stand there like the floor is going to advise you. Take the baby." Dominic crossed the diner. "I apologize for interrupting your shift." Mia wiped her hands on her apron. "How did you know I worked here? You said you worked multiple jobs." "That is not an answer. It is the polite version." "That is not comforting." "No," Dominic said. "I imagine not." Ella leaned so far toward Mia that Dominic had to tighten his arm around her. Mia looked at him. He nodded once. She took the child. Ella settled against her instantly, as if some wire inside her had stopped humming. The change was so visible that Gigi's face softened before she could hide it. Dominic saw it too. His jaw tightened. Gigi pointed toward the corner booth. "Sit. I'll cover her section for 10 minutes. If this turns dramatic, I charge rich people rates." Dominic inclined his head. "That seems fair." Gigi narrowed her eyes. "Do not charm me. I am resistant. I would not presume." "You absolutely would." Mia almost laughed. That made Dominic look at her in a way that unsettled her more than his silence had. They sat in the corner booth. Ella remained in Mia's lap, turning a laminated menu over and over with serious concentration. Gigi brought coffee for Dominic without asking, and a small bowl of sliced bananas for Ella. Dominic looked at the bowl. "She may not eat those." Gigi poured coffee. "Then she can judge them quietly." After Gigi left, silence stretched between Mia and Dominic. Outside, rain slipped down the window in thin silver lines. Inside the diner, hummed around them, trying very hard not to listen. Dominic wrapped both hands around the mug. "I took Ella to her pediatric specialist this morning." Mia kept her voice gentle. "And?" She said 2 more words before breakfast. Mia looked down at Ella. The child was pressing a banana slice flat with her finger. What words? Dominic's eyes stayed on his daughter, Mia. Mia's throat tightened. And door. She stood by the nursery door and said it until I opened it. Mia understood before he said the rest. Dominic's voice lowered. She was looking for you. The words settled heavily between them. Mia brushed a curl back from Ella's forehead. Dominic, I'm not her mother. I know. She may not know that. She knows Celeste is gone, he said. Mia looked up. His face had gone still, but there was no coldness in it now, only control holding back something raw. She was an infant when Celeste died, Dominic said. She knows absence. Children know that before they know names. Mia could not argue with that. Ella lifted a banana slice toward her mouth, missed, and pressed it against Mia's chin. Mia smiled despite the ache in her chest. Thank you. Very generous. Ella smiled. It was small, but Dominic saw it. He looked away for 1 second toward the window. Mia saw his hand tighten around the coffee mug. I want to ask you something, he said. You seem like a man who usually just gives instructions. I am trying not to be. That disarmed her more than she wanted it to. He looked back at her. I want Ella to spend time with you. Public places, daylight, anywhere you choose. If your schedule is the obstacle, I will compensate you for your time. Number. The word came out fast. Dominic went still. Mia straightened. No money, not for this. His gaze sharpened. You are sure? She is a child, Mia said, not a transaction. For the first time since he entered the diner, something like respect moved across Dominic's face. Good. Mia frowned. Good. I needed to know if you would say that. Gigi appeared with the coffee pot at exactly the wrong moment. I like her too, she said. She has sense, which is inconvenient because she rarely uses it on herself. Gigi. Gigi topped off Dominic's coffee and pointed at him with the pot. You hurt that girl, and I will learn where powerful men keep their secrets. Dominic did not blink. Understood. Gigi stared at him. That was me threatening you. I understood that too. She walked away. Mia closed her eyes briefly. I am so sorry. I am not, Dominic said. I prefer clear terms. Mia looked at him, then laughed once under her breath. The sound surprised both of them. Ella looked up fascinated. Mia, she said. Mia froze. Dominic's expression changed. Not much. Enough. Mia touched Ella's cheek. Yes, she whispered. Mia. Ella patted her apron. Mamma Mia. The diner seemed to hold its breath. Mia's eyes burned. Dominic looked like a man watching a locked door open from the inside. She had to look away. After a moment, she said, I can meet twice a week. Maybe more if school and work allow it. But I choose the places. No private homes. No expensive gifts. No pressure. And no men following me without my permission. Dominic nodded. Done. That easy. When it concerns Ella, yes. The answer was too immediate to distrust and too intense to feel safe. Mia pulled her phone from her apron pocket. Give me your number. You already have it. I have a terrifying black card. That is not the same thing. His mouth moved almost a smile. She typed his number and saved it as Dominic Voss, then sent a blank text so he would have hers. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then at her. Thank you, Mia Hart. The way he said her full name made something in her stomach tighten. She ignored it. When Dominic stood to leave, Ella protested with a small, wounded sound. Mia handed her back carefully. The little girl clutched at her apron lower lip, trembling. Dominic murmured something near Ella's ear. Low, patient. A father's voice, not a boss's. Ella quieted, but her eyes stayed on Mia. At the door, Dominic paused. Tomorrow. Mia shook her head. I have class and a dinner shift. The day after. She should have said no. Instead, she said Thursday, 2 o'clock, Audubon Park. By the oak trees if the rain holds. Dominic nodded. We will be there. He stepped out into the wet afternoon. The black SUV pulled away from the curb, its red taillights blurring through the rain-streaked window. Mia stood there longer than she meant to. Gigi came up beside her. That man looks like trouble with excellent tailoring. Mia folded her arms. He loves his daughter. Those two things can live in the same suit. Mia sighed. I know. Gigi studied her profile. Do you? Mia did not answer. The rest of the shift passed in pieces. Coffee, pancakes, refilled napkins, extra syrup, a toddler dropping crayons under table 3, a man complaining his eggs were too soft after eating half of them. But underneath every ordinary motion, Mia felt the world tilting. After work, she went home with diner grease in her hair and rain biting through her coat. Piper was at the table surrounded by flashcards, one hand buried in her curls. Mia dropped into the chair across from her. He came to the diner. Piper did not look up. Of course he did. Men like that do not wait for fate to follow up. Ella said my name. Now Piper looked up. Mia. Mamma Mia. Piper's face softened. Oh, for a while, neither of them spoke. Then Piper said, You already care about her. Mia leaned back and stared at the ceiling. She is not hard to care about. And him. Mia's answer came too late. I barely know him. Piper gave her a tired, knowing look. That was not no. Mia stood and reached for the kettle. I'm making tea. You hate tea. My grandmother believed tea solved things. Did it? No. But it gave her something to do while worrying. Piper closed her textbook. Then make me some too. Later. After Piper fell asleep with flashcards on her chest, Mia sat alone at the kitchen table. The apartment was quiet except for the radiator and the soft rush of cars through wet streets below. She opened her notebook for class, but instead of reading, she wrote one sentence in the margin. Children recognize safety before words. Then she looked at Dominic's text thread empty except for the message she had sent. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Finally, she typed, Thursday, 2 o'clock, Audubon Park, by the oak trees. The reply came almost instantly. We will be there. Mia stared at those words until the screen dimmed. From the couch, Piper mumbled in her sleep, Do not marry the scary man. Mia laughed softly in the dark. I'm meeting his daughter in a park, she whispered. But when she turned off the light and carried her phone to bed, she set it on the pillow beside her. Thursday came with a pale sky and wet wind moving through the oak trees. Mia reached Audubon Park 10 minutes early, which annoyed her because it felt too much like nervousness. She told herself she had only arrived early because the streetcar schedule was unreliable, because rain had been threatening all morning, because she did not like being late. None of that explained why she had changed shirts twice. The park smelled like damp grass, old leaves, and coffee from a vendor cart near the walking path. Spanish moss hung from the live oaks like silver thread. A jogger passed with music leaking from his headphones. Two mothers pushed strollers side by side, talking in soft, tired voices. A little boy in red rain boots jumped into a puddle and laughed when muddy water splashed his knees. It was an ordinary afternoon. That made Mia more nervous. Danger was easier to understand when it wore a black suit and entered a private restaurant with bodyguards. It was harder when it stood under an oak tree holding a toddler in a pink coat. Dominic Voss was already there. Of course he was. He stood near the iron fence with one hand in the pocket of his dark coat, Ella balanced on his other arm. He looked wrong in the park, too, controlled among strollers, dogs, fallen leaves, and children with juice boxes. Behind him, a man leaned against a lamppost pretending to look at his phone. Another sat on a bench with a newspaper held at an angle that hid nothing. Mia noticed both of them. Dominic noticed her noticing. You see a lot, he said when she reached him. I live in New Orleans and wait tables for rich people. It is a survival skill. His mouth softened at one corner. Ella turned in his arms. The moment she saw Mia, her whole body lifted. Mama. The word came softly, but it landed with the same force as before. Mia knelt so she was eye level with the child. Hi, Ella. Ella reached for her with both hands, fingers opening and closing. Dominic did not hesitate this time. He passed Ella into Mia's arms with careful trust, as if handing over the one thing in the world that could still destroy him. Ella tucked her face into Mia's scarf and breathed in. Mia closed her eyes for half a second. Dominic saw it. You are cold, he said. I'm always cold from November to March. Your coat is too thin. That is an opinion rich men have about other people's coats. It is also true. Mia looked up at him. Are you going to insult my shoes too, or should we save that for coffee? Dominic glanced down at her sneakers. They were clean, but worn gray at the edges and damp from the path. They look loyal, he said. Mia laughed before she could stop herself. That is the nicest possible way to say they are dying. Ella lifted her head and looked at Mia's feet. Shoo! Mia froze. Dominic went still. Mia kept her voice soft, steady, bright without becoming loud. Yes, shoes, those are shoes. Ella pointed again. Shoe. That's right, sweetheart. Dominic stared at his daughter like the ground had moved beneath him. His face did not break this time. He held it together. But Mia saw the effort. She saw the grief pass through his eyes, not only grief, but wonder, fear, and the terrible ache of being given something after learning not to ask. Ella touched Mia's cheek with one mittened hand. Mia. Mia swallowed. Yes. Mia. Dominic turned toward the trees. Rain clung to the shoulders of his coat. For a second, he looked less like a man who commanded rooms and more like one standing alone outside a locked door, listening to someone turn the key from the inside. They walked along the path slowly. Ella insisted on walking after a few minutes. She held Mia's fingers in one hand and Dominic's in the other. It should have looked strange. It should have felt borrowed, temporary, impossible. It did not. That frightened Mia more than the guards. Ella stopped for everything. A brown leaf stuck to the pavement. A squirrel running across the grass. A dog wearing a yellow rain jacket. A pigeon with one foot stepping boldly near a bench. Bird, Mia said gently. Ella frowned with great concentration. Bah. Dominic looked down. Bird. Ella considered him. Bah. He nodded, once solemn as a judge. Accepted. Mia gave him a look. Praise is allowed to sound happy. I was happy. That was your happy voice. It was restrained. That sounds exhausting. Dominic looked at her then. Not long, just enough. It has served me well. Has it? The question slipped out before Mia could soften it. Dominic did not answer right away. The wind moved through the moss above them. Ella crouched to poke a wet leaf. No, he said, not always. They bought hot chocolate from the vendor cart because Ella saw another child holding a cup and made a sound that was not quite a word, but clearly an order. Dominic paid with a bill large enough to make the vendor stand straighter. Mia rolled her eyes. You know they sell hot chocolate to normal people too. Dominic handed her a cup. I am aware. Are you? I have seen normal people from a distance. Mia almost choked on her first sip. Ella giggled. It was tiny, sudden, and bright. Dominic did not move. Mia looked at him over the rim of her cup. His gaze was fixed on Ella. The park continued around them. Wheels rolled over gravel. Leaves stirred. A child cried near the fountain. Somewhere far off, a trumpet player began a slow blues melody. Dominic stood completely still because his daughter had laughed. Mia lowered her cup. When was the last time you heard that? He answered without looking away. Before Celeste died, she laughed in her sleep sometimes. After that, not much. Mia wished she had something wise to say. She did not. So, she adjusted Ella's hat over one ear and said, Then we'll have to give her more ridiculous things to laugh at. Ella pointed at Dominic's coat. Big. Mia looked at him. There, starting strong. Dominic glanced at his coat. It is appropriately sized. It is dramatic. It is warm. It has villain energy. Ella clapped once, delighted by Mia's tone, even though she could not possibly understand the insult. Dominic's mouth moved, not a full smile. Close enough to feel dangerous. After that afternoon, the meetings became a rhythm. Tuesdays when Mia's class ended early. Thursdays if Gigi could cover the last hour of her shift. Sometimes Saturdays, though Mia told herself Saturdays only happened because Ella had begun asking for her by name. They met in public places because Mia insisted. Dominic agreed because he had promised. The aquarium of the Americas on a gray afternoon when the Mississippi looked like beaten steel. A bakery on Magazine Street where Ella got powdered sugar on her coat, and Dominic looked personally offended by crumbs. A little bookstore in the Garden District where Ella ignored every bright picture book and fell in love with a heavy book about whales she could barely lift. Each place gave Ella another word. Fish, moon, more, book. The word no arrived at the bakery. Dominic tried to slide the last piece of beignet away before Ella could cover herself in more sugar. Ella placed both hands over the plate, looked directly into his eyes, and said no. Mia pressed a napkin to her mouth. Dominic looked at her. Do not laugh. I would never. You are laughing. I am supporting language development. You are enjoying my defeat. That too. Ella held the beignet in both hands and said again, firmer this time. Number. Dominic sat back defeated by a toddler and powdered sugar. She has your tone, he said. She has judgment. She has sugar in her hair. Great leaders often do. The more Ella spoke, the more Dominic changed around the edges. Not in public. Not where other men could see and mistake softness for weakness. But Mia saw it in small things. The way he carried Ella's stuffed rabbit in the inside pocket of his coat without complaint. The way he cut grapes into quarters with surgical focus. The way his hand always moved to the back of Ella's head when a door slammed nearby, not to restrain her, only to remind her he was there. And he watched Mia too, not with lazy interest, not with the confidence of a man used to getting what he wanted. He watched her like he was trying to understand how someone so ordinary had become necessary to his daughter's peace. That should have made her uncomfortable. It did, just not enough to make her stop coming. One rainy Tuesday at the aquarium, Ella stood before the largest tank with both palms pressed to the glass. Blue light moved over her small face. Silver fish turned together like one thought. A stingray passed overhead wide and silent, its shadow sliding across the floor. Big Ella whispered. Mia crouched beside her. Yes, very big. Ella pointed. Fish. That's right, big fish. Ella pressed closer to the glass. Big fish. Mia looked over her shoulder. Dominic stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets, looking not at the tank but at Ella's reflection. She said 2 words together, Mia said. I heard. His voice sounded rough. Ella kept whispering to the fish. Mia stood and moved beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke. The aquarium around them was full of strollers, wet jackets, tired parents and children begging for snacks. But in the blue light everything felt underwater. Dominic said, She sleeps through the night after she sees you. Mia looked at Ella. Maybe routine helps. Maybe. You do not sound convinced. I am convinced a very little lately. Mia turned to him. Up close, she could see the tiredness beneath the expensive coat and controlled posture. The faint shadows under his eyes. The silver at his temples. The way grief had not disappeared from him, only learned manners. You look like you have not rested in years, she said. The honesty surprised her. Dominic looked at her. For once, no polished answer came. No, he said, I have not. Later, Ella fell asleep in her stroller with one hand wrapped around the ear of her stuffed rabbit. Mia and Dominic sat at a small table near the cafe windows. Outside, the river rolled dark beneath the rain. Mia wrapped both hands around a paper cup of coffee. Do you always bring security everywhere? Yes, even here. Especially here. That sounds exhausting. Dominic looked at her. You say that as if exhaustion changes the math. It should. It does not. Mia studied him for a moment. Piper thinks I am losing my mind. Piper is the roommate who eats cereal from mixing bowls. Mia blinked. How do you know that? You mentioned her. I mentioned cereal. You said she stole your yogurt and replaced it with cereal. Mia stared at him. You remember strange things. I remember things that mattered to you. The words were quiet. Simple. Too intimate for the plastic table between them. Mia looked down at her coffee. That is not fair. No, Dominic said, probably not. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mia asked the question that had been sitting inside her for weeks. What exactly are you, Dominic? His gaze did not move. A father. That is not the whole answer. Number. I need more than that. He looked toward Ella sleeping in the stroller. My family moves freight through the Gulf and the river. We own warehouses, trucks, security companies, construction stakes, and enough dock contracts to make honest men nervous. Mia waited. His voice remained even. We settle disputes before they become public. We collect debts some people would rather forget. We know which men are dangerous because sometimes we made them that way. Mia's stomach tightened. He turned back to her. I run legal businesses. I also inherited illegal loyalty. Those are not the same thing, but they shake hands often. That is a very elegant way to say you scare people. I do scare people. Do you enjoy it? Sometimes it prevents worse things. That is not an answer. It is the truest one I have. Rain tapped the window. Ella shifted in sleep. Somewhere behind them, a child shrieked with laughter near the touch tank. Mia said, I want to help children who grow up afraid. I know. And you are part of a world that teaches people fear. Yes, the lack of excuse hit harder than a defense would have. Dominic leaned forward slightly. I am not asking you to approve of me. Then what are you asking? To see me clearly before you decide to leave. Her chest tightened. That sounds like you think I am leaving. I think sensible women do. Mia almost smiled, but it hurt too much. I have rarely been accused of being sensible. No, he said softly. You walked toward my daughter in a room full of men who would have stepped back. She was scared. So were you. Yes, you still came. Mia had no answer for that. The bond between Mia and Ella grew in visible ways. The bond between Mia and Dominic grew in quieter spaces neither of them knew how to name. A look across a cafe table when Ella said a new word. His hand hovering near Mia's elbow when they crossed a slick curb, never touching unless she stumbled. Her noticing he took his coffee black but never finished it. His learning she hated lilies because funeral homes used them too often. Her learning Celeste had loved White Rose's old jazz records and thunderstorms. One evening after the bookstore, Dominic offered to drive Mia home. She should have refused. She had refused before. This time, Ella had fallen asleep with her cheek against Mia's shoulder, and the rain outside had turned sharp enough to sting. Mia slid into the back seat beside Ella's car seat. Dominic sat across from her in the wide leather interior while the city moved by in streaks of gold and water. Ella slept with one hand still gripping Mia's sleeve. Dominic watched the tiny fist for a long time. She does that when she is afraid someone will disappear, he said. Mia looked down. I am not disappearing. The words came too easily. Dominic looked at her. Mia felt warmth rise to her face and turned toward the window. The SUV moved through New Orleans, past corner stores, old churches, shotgun houses, and balconies glowing under rain. The city looked softer from inside the car, but Mia knew better. Glass could make anything look safe. After a while, she asked, Where is Celeste buried? Dominic's gaze shifted to the window. Lafayette Cemetery near the back wall. Do you go often? Yes. Does Ella? Sometimes. She touches the stone and says nothing. Mia swallowed. She was probably kind. Dominic's jaw flexed. She was. He did not say beautiful. He did not say perfect. He said kind as if that was the part death had not been able to take. The car stopped outside Mia's building. Rain fell softly through the streetlight. Dominic stepped out first and opened her door before the driver could. Mia carefully eased Ella's fingers from her sleeve. The child stirred. Mama, she whispered, still asleep. Stay. The words stayed between them in the rain. Dominic's hand paused near the door. Mia looked at him. His face was controlled, but his eyes were not. She says that now, he said quietly when she does not want something to end. Mia tried to smile. That is a lot of pressure for a Tuesday night. It is. He closed the door softly after she stepped out. Mia adjusted her bag on her shoulder. You do not have to walk me to the entrance. I know. Then why are you doing it? Dominic looked at the dark doorway, then back at her. Because New Orleans is less harmless than it pretends to be. That sounds like something a dangerous man says when he is worried. His gaze held hers. Maybe it is both. Rain caught on the shoulders of his coat. Up close, he looked less untouchable, more tired, more human, more dangerous in the way a person becomes dangerous when they start to matter. Mia looked down at her worn sneakers. Piper thinks you probably have a body count. One dark brow lifted. And what do you think? Mia studied his face under the streetlight. I think you are carrying more than you let anyone see. For a second, Dominic did not move. Then he said very low, That is the trouble with you, Mia Hart. What trouble? You see too much. She should have laughed. She did not. Good night, Dominic. Good night, Mia. She climbed the stairs without looking back until she reached the landing. When she turned, he was still beside the SUV, one hand resting on the roof watching to make sure she got inside. Only, after she shut the door, did the headlights sweep away. Upstairs, Piper was awake at the table with a textbook open and a spoon in a jar of peanut butter. You are late, she said. I know. You look weird. That is specific. Glowing weird. I hate it. Mia went to the sink for water. Piper closed the textbook. Mia. What? This is not just about the kid anymore. Mia did not answer. Piper's voice softened. Is it? Mia stood at the window looking down at the wet street where the SUV had been. No, she said. The admission was so quiet she almost did not hear herself say it. For 3 days after that, Dominic did not mention the moment outside her building. Neither did Mia. They met again at a small cafe near the river because Ella had demanded pancakes with the fierce certainty of a person who had discovered breakfast could be negotiated. Dominic stared at the menu. Mia leaned over. What is wrong? There are too many pancake choices. You look like you have handled federal investigations with less concern. Federal investigations rarely involve blueberries, chocolate chips, and something called birthday cake batter. Ella slapped both hands on the table. Cake. Mia pointed at Dominic. You caused this. I read available options. You introduced chaos. The waitress brought pancakes. Ella ate 3 bites and smeared syrup across Dominic's cuff. Dominic looked at the damage. Mia waited. He simply picked up a napkin and cleaned Ella's fingers first. That was the kind of thing that made Mia forget caution. Later, as they left the cafe, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. It was not one of Dominic's usual cars. The windows were too dark. The engine was running. Dominic noticed it a second after she did. His posture changed. No panic, no alarm, just a shift. His hand moved to Ella's back. His eyes went to the reflection in the cafe window. One of his men stepped closer. Mia's pulse quickened. What is it? Nothing. That is a lie. Dominic looked at her. Get in the car. Dominic, please. The word stopped her more effectively than an order. She climbed into the SUV with Ella. Dominic spoke to the driver in a voice too low for Mia to hear. The black sedan pulled away before they did. That night, Mia saw another car parked half a block from her apartment. Same shape, same dark windows. She watched it from behind her curtain for 10 minutes before her phone lit up in her hand. She texted Dominic, Are you having me followed? His reply came in less than a minute. Protected. Mia called him immediately. He answered on the first ring. Those are not the same thing she said. There was silence on his end. Not empty silence. Controlled silence. No, Dominic said. They are not. Then why is there a car outside my building? Because someone asked questions about you. Mia gripped the phone tighter. What questions? Your schedule. Your school. Your work. Outside, rain slid down the window like thin black glass. Dominic's voice dropped. And your grandmother. Mia sat on the edge of her bed with the phone pressed hard against her ear. Outside, the black sedan waited under the streetlight. Rain slid over its windshield in silver lines. The engine was off now, but the car still felt alive like a dark animal crouched half a block from her door. My grandmother, Mia said. Dominic did not answer quickly enough. That was how she knew whatever came next would hurt. Mia, he said, and her name sounded different in his mouth now. Not careful, not charming, heavy. What about my grandmother? I do not want to do this over the phone. A cold laugh left her before she could stop it. You called me and said someone is asking questions about my dead grandmother. You do not get to become mysterious now. Silence moved between them. Then Dominic said Miriam Hart worked at St. Agnes Medical Center the night Celeste died. Mia did not breathe. The apartment seemed to shrink around her. The thin curtain that divided her space from Piper's couch. The chipped mug on the crate she used as a nightstand. The textbooks stacked against the wall. The old sweater hanging from the back of a chair. Everything ordinary suddenly looked staged, fragile, temporary. My grandmother was a maternity nurse, Mia said slowly. She worked there for years. I know. The words hit wrong. Mia stood. Stop saying that. Mia, no. Stop knowing things about my life before I tell you. Dominic's breathing changed on the line. You are right. That made her angrier. Outside, the sedan's headlights blinked once, then went dark. Is that your car? She asked. Yes. Tell it to leave. Number? Her jaw tightened. Dominic. Someone asked about you. Until I know who and why, I'm not leaving you unprotected. You mean watched. I mean alive. The words landed hard enough to silence her. Across the room, Piper slept on the couch with one arm hanging over the side, a nursing textbook open on her chest. Her mouth was slightly parted. She had no idea Danger had parked outside their building wearing tinted glass. Mia lowered her voice. Is Ella safe? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. There was no hesitation that time. It helped. Not enough. Where are you? Mia asked. My office. At this hour. I did not want these files in my house. Files. The word settled cold in her stomach. What files? Hospital records. Old staff schedules, a letter. Mia felt her hand tighten around the phone. What letter? Dominic's voice dropped. One your grandmother wrote 3 days after Celeste died. Mia sat back down because her knees stopped trusting her. My grandmother never mentioned Celeste Voss. I believe she tried to reach me. I believe someone made sure she did not. Mia stared at the rain-streaked window. Her own reflection stared back pale and frightened. She raised me, Mia whispered. I knew when her knees hurt. I knew which tea she drank when she could not sleep. I knew she hated hospital coffee and loved old westerns and cried every Christmas Eve when she thought I was asleep. She would have told me. Maybe she wanted you safe. The sentence cut deep because it sounded like Miriam. Mia closed her eyes. I have class in the morning. I know. Do not say it. I will send Jonah after class. I can take the streetcar. I know you can. That was not permission. No, Dominic said softly. It was respect. Mia hated how one small shift in his voice could loosen her anger. I am still mad at you. You should be. I mean really mad. I know. She looked out at the black sedan. After class, she said, but Dominic. Yes. If this is about my grandmother, I hear it from you. Not from one of your men. Not from a lawyer. Not from some folder slid across a table like I am part of your business. You have my word. She almost said she did not know what his word was worth. But she did. That was another problem. The next morning, Professor Ellis's lecture moved around Mia like sound underwater. The room was warm. The lights hummed. Someone behind her clicked a pen over and over until Mia wanted to turn around and snap it in half. The class was discussing trauma memory in young children. Mia wrote nothing in her notebook except one word. Miriam. Her grandmother's name sat alone in blue ink, small and stubborn. At 11:15, Mia stepped out of the college building into a hard wind that pushed damp hair against her mouth. A black SUV waited at the curb. Jonah Reed stood beside it. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered gray at the temples with a face built for silence. He opened the rear door before Mia reached him. Miss Hart, you people really commit to the dramatic car thing. Jonah did not blink. Parking is difficult in this city. Mia stared at him. Was that a joke? Depends how much trouble I'm in for making it. Despite herself, Mia almost smiled. Almost. She slid into the back seat. Jonah closed the door and took the front passenger seat. Another man drove. As they pulled into traffic, Mia watched New Orleans pass in wet strips of brick iron balconies, corner stores, and dripping palms. Ordinary life was everywhere. A woman in red scrubs crossed the street holding coffee like a lifeline. A man unlocked a flower shop. A little boy dragged a backpack behind him while his mother fixed his collar. Mia felt suddenly outside all of it. "Is Ella really safe?" she asked. Jonah's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Yes. Do all of you practice answering with one syllable? Or is it part of the hiring process?" The driver coughed suspiciously close to a laugh. Jonah said boss likes precision. I like information. Then you and the boss are going to have an interesting day. The SUV turned toward the river. Dominic's office occupied the top floors of a black glass tower near the Mississippi, a building so polished it seemed to reflect a more expensive version of the city. In the lobby, the floors were pale stone, the walls dark wood, and the air quiet enough to hear money breathing. A receptionist in a cream blazer stood when Mia entered. "Miss Hart, this way, please." Mia almost said she could find an elevator by herself, but a man by the private lift had already entered a code and used a key card. The doors opened without a sound. The elevator rose too fast. Mia watched her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her coat was old. Her sneakers were clean but worn. Her hair had escaped its clip in the wind. She looked exactly like what she was, a waitress, a student, a woman who had no business walking into the private tower of Dominic Voss. Then she remembered Ella's hands reaching for her. Maybe business had nothing to do with it. The doors opened into a quiet reception area framed by floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond the glass, the river cut through the city like a dark ribbon. The sky hung low and gray. Dominic's office door was open. He stood inside near the window's jacket-off sleeves rolled to his forearms, tie loosened. He looked as if he had not slept. On the low table before the sofa were folders, copies of hospital records, old photographs, and a single clear sleeve holding a handwritten letter. Mia stopped in the doorway. Dominic turned. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he said, "Thank you for coming. I did not come for you." "I know." She crossed the room and stood over the table. The letter waited there. Her breath caught before she touched it. She knew that handwriting the way some people knew prayers. Miriam Hart had written in blue ink. Neat, slanted, practical. The same handwriting that had signed field trip slips, birthday cards, grocery lists, and notes for missed school days. Mia picked it up carefully. The date at the top was 3 days after Celeste Voss died. "Dear Mr. Voss, please accept my deepest condolences for the loss of your wife. I understand this letter may be unwelcome during a time of grief, but I feel morally bound to document what I witnessed during Mrs. Voss's labor and the hours before her passing." Mia swallowed. The words blurred, then sharpened. A medication was administered outside the treatment plan over my objection. I documented the concern and reported it through proper internal channels. I believe the dosage and timing require immediate review. I fear my concerns may be minimized or buried. If the truth is ever needed, I pray this reaches the right hands. Miriam Hart, R.N. The office was silent. Dominic did not speak. That mercy nearly broke her. Mia lowered the paper slowly. She never told me. Number. She carried this. Yes, she carried it alone. Dominic's face changed, though only slightly. Maybe she did not want you carrying it too. Mia looked at him. That sounds like her. Her voice shook on the last word. She sat down before her legs betrayed her. Dominic poured water from a glass bottle on the side table and handed it to her without comment. She took it. The cold steadied her fingers. "What happened to Celeste?" she asked. Dominic sat across from her, but he did not relax. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "The official report says postpartum hemorrhage following sudden destabilization." Mia looked at the folders. "And the real report? There is not one. That is the problem." He opened a file and slid a copy toward her. "The chart is clean where it should be messy, and messy where it should be clean. Medication times do not match nursing notes. One dosage was crossed out and rewritten. Dr. Mason Bell signed 2 pages hours after Celeste was already gone. The doctor's name sat in the room like a lit match. He was her doctor. He was the attending physician on call. and my grandmother objected to something he gave her. Yes. Mia looked back at the letter. Why did you never see this? The question came out harsher than she meant. Dominic accepted it anyway. Because I was burying my wife and learning how to hold a newborn who cried like she knew what had happened. Because the hospital gave me a reason wrapped in medical language, and at the time a reason felt better than war. Mia looked at him then. Really looked. The power was still there. The money. The danger. The name that bent rooms around him. But beneath it was a man who had been handed a baby and a death certificate in the same breath. Her anger softened, only a little. Who buried the letter? I do not know yet. It was never logged through the public complaint system. My investigator found it in a private archive attached to a retired administrator's off-site files. How deep have you been digging? Dominic's eyes held hers, deep enough that someone noticed. The room seemed to grow colder. Mia set the glass down. Someone asked about me because of this. Yes, because of Miriam. Probably. And you had my apartment watched. Yes. She stood. Dominic rose too. Not quickly, but at once. Mia crossed to the window because if she stayed near the letter she might cry, and she was too angry to give the room that kind of softness. You should have told me. Yes. She turned around. That is it, no defense. You are right. Mia stared at him. Dominic stood near the table, tall and tired and dangerous, with the city behind him and guilt in his eyes. I am not sorry I protected you, he said. I am sorry I decided how without asking. That is dangerously close to sounding reasonable. I am trying. Mia folded her arms tightly. You do not get to turn concern into control. Number. You do not get to say you care about me and then make my life smaller. His jaw moved once. Number. If I am in danger, I deserve the truth. Yes. She hated him a little for making the argument so hard by agreeing. She looked away first. What else? Dominic did not pretend not to understand. There is a name that keeps appearing around the edges. Whose name? Conrad Blackwell. Mia searched her memory. Celeste's godfather. Dominic's gaze sharpened. You read about her. I looked you up. Of course you did. That sounds judgmental from a man who put a car outside my apartment. Fair. Mia almost smiled. It vanished quickly. What does Conrad have to do with this? He was Celeste's godfather. My father's friend. My business partner after my father died. He handled portions of Celeste's family trust before our marriage. And you think he was involved? I think he had access motive and a talent for standing close to tragedy without getting blood on his cuffs. A chill moved through her. Why would he want Celeste dead? Dominic looked toward the river. I do not know enough to answer that without guessing. But you have guessed. Yes. She waited. He turned back. Celeste was days away from gaining full control of several trust assets tied to riverfront redevelopment port contracts and shipping interests. Conrad wanted those assets leveraged. Celeste refused. She wanted distance from that part of the business. Mia thought of the photograph she had seen in the library. Celeste's warm hand on Dominic's sleeve. Dominic looking at her like the world had gone quiet. She was trying to pull you out, Mia said. Dominic's silence was answer enough. Her voice softened despite herself. Did you want out? I wanted whatever kept her looking at me like I was still capable of becoming decent. The honesty landed between them. Mia looked down at Miriam's letter. My grandmother saw something. Yes. And someone made sure no one listened. Dominic's voice turned cold. Yes. Before Mia could answer, Dominic's desk phone rang. He looked at the caller ID. His entire posture changed. The man, sitting with grief, disappeared. In his place stood the man New Orleans feared. He picked up. Talk. Mia watched his face while he listened. No color drained from him. Dominic Voss was not built that way. But every line of him sharpened. When? A pause. Was she touched? Mia's stomach dropped. Dominic's eyes flicked to her. I am on my way. He hung up with terrifying care. What happened? Mia asked. He was already reaching for his jacket. Someone approached Ella in the park. For 1 second the office had no air. What? Claire had her near the fountain. Jonah's man stopped him before he reached her. Reached her how? Dominic's voice was controlled in a way that made it worse. He had a stuffed bear. The camera near the bench was disabled. He walked toward her like he belonged there. Mia grabbed her coat from the chair. "Take me to her." Dominic did not argue. That scared her almost as much as the news. The building moved around him in seconds. Men appeared in the hall. Jonah was already at the elevator. Phones came out. Orders passed in low voices. Cars shifted below before Mia even reached the private lift. Inside the elevator, mirrored walls reflected Dominic from every angle. All of them looked lethal. Mia stood beside him, pulse pounding in her throat. "She is safe?" she asked. "Yes." "Say it again." His eyes met hers. "She is safe." Frightened but safe. Mia nodded once. The elevator dropped. Dominic reached for her hand. Not tenderly, not romantically, like a man needing an anchor. She let him. The ride to Dominic's Garden District townhouse blurred. The SUV cut through traffic with impossible precision. Rain began to fall again, turning the streets dark and slick. Dominic made call after call, each sentence clipped and quiet. "Find the car. Pull the camera logs. No press. Move the child now." Mia sat with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles hurt. At the townhouse, Ella was in the front parlor with Claire Monroe, a soft-faced woman with anxious eyes. The moment Ella saw Mia, she burst into tears. "Mama." Mia crossed the room and gathered her up. I'm here, sweetheart." The child shook against her. Dominic stood in the doorway looking at them with a face so still it might have been carved from stone. Claire spoke quietly. He never touched her. Jonah got between them, but she saw him run. She saw everyone panic. Mia felt Ella's hand clutch the collar of her coat. Dominic said, "We are leaving." Claire nodded, as if she had expected nothing else. Mia looked up. "Leaving where?" "The lake house. Lake Pontchartrain." "Yes. For how long?" "As long as necessary." A day ago, Mia would have argued. She would have said she had work school, rent a roommate, a life. She would have reminded him of every rule she made and every line he had promised not to cross. But Ella was trembling in her arms, and Miriam's letter was folded inside Mia's coat pocket, like a match waiting to burn down every ordinary excuse. She looked at Dominic. "Piper needs to know where I am. You will tell her. Not one of your men, of course. And Gigi, yes. And I am not a prisoner." Dominic's face changed. No, never. She believed him. That was terrifying, too. The drive north took them out of the city and toward older roads lined with dark trees and gated houses set back from the street. Rain moved over the windows in silver streams. Ella slept in Mia's lap despite the car seat waiting beside them, one hand locked around Mia's sleeve. Dominic sat across from them watching the road, the mirrors, his phone, his daughter. The Voss estate rose out of the rain near Lake Pontchartrain, like something built to withstand weather and enemies. Gray stone, tall windows glowing gold, iron gates, security lights sweeping across wet lawn. Beyond the house, the lake was a black, restless presence. The front door opened before the SUV stopped. A woman in her 60s stood under the entry chandelier wearing a dark dress, sensible shoes, and an expression that could discipline a storm. "Dominic," she said, "the nursery is ready." "Thank you, Vivian." Her eyes moved to Mia, then to Ella, asleep against her. "So this is Mia Hart." Mia adjusted Ella carefully. "Yes, ma'am." Vivian gave a small approving nod. "She has manners. Good. Come in before the lake wind ruins what the rain started." Mia stepped into warmth, wood smoke, and the faint smell of garlic. She had expected cold wealth, marble echoes, rooms too perfect to breathe in. Instead, the house felt lived in. Dark wood floors, worn at the center. Family photographs along the staircase. Books stacked beside a lamp. A bowl of apples on a side table. A pair of tiny shoes abandoned near the bottom step. Vivian was already issuing instructions. Dry clothes for Miss Hart. Tea in the nursery. Soup in 20 minutes. Dominic, if you bleed on my rug, choose another rug. I'm not bleeding. Not yet, the night is young. Mia stared. Dominic almost smiled. Almost. They carried Ella upstairs to a nursery painted in soft lake colors with clouds on the walls and a nightlight glowing near the crib. Ella woke when Mia tried to lay her down and immediately began to cry. No mama. Mia sat on the edge of the small bed beside the crib and pulled her close. I'm right here. Stay. Dominic stood by the door. Mia felt his gaze before she met it. I'm staying tonight, she said. She meant it for Ella. Dominic heard it too. Something in his face shifted so small, most people would have missed it. Mia did not. Later, after Ella finally slept, Vivian led Mia to the room beside the nursery. Clothes had been laid out on the bed. Soft, dark pants, a cream sweater, thick socks. Mia touched the sweater. This is too nice. Vivian stood in the doorway. It is clean and it fits. That does not make it mine. For tonight it does. Mia looked at her. You are very bossy. Vivian's mouth twitched. That is why this house still stands. After a shower in a bathroom bigger than Mia's kitchen, she came downstairs in borrowed clothes, her hair damp, her body heavy with exhaustion. She heard Dominic's voice before she saw him. Low, cold, controlled. He stood in the library near the fireplace phone to his ear. Mia did not understand every name, but she understood enough. The man from the park had no identification. The stuffed bear came from a shop outside Baton Rouge. The security camera had been disabled remotely. The car used in the escape was found burned near the canal. Dominic ended the call and stared into the fire. You should eat, Mia said from the doorway. He did not turn. Vivian sent you. She strongly suggested I bully you. That sounds like her. Mia crossed into the room. The library smelled of leather smoke and old paper. Rain struck the windows. The lake moved beyond the glass, invisible but loud. Dominic turned then. His gaze moved over the borrowed sweater, her damp hair, her tired face. I am sorry, he said. For what? For how fast this has become impossible. Mia sat in one of the leather chairs near the fire. It was impossible when your daughter called me Mama, in a room full of men pretending not to stare. A faint breath left him. That is true. He sat across from her. For a moment, the only sound was the fire. Then Mia heard it. A small cry from upstairs. Not loud, not panicked. Just one broken little sound. Mia stood at once. Dominic stood too. They reached the nursery together. Ella was half awake, face wet, one hand reaching into the empty air. Mama, she whimpered. Mia sat beside her and gathered her close. I'm here. Ella trembled. Mia began to hum before she knew she was doing it. An old tune. Soft, slow, swaying. The same lullaby Miriam used to sing when thunder shook the apartment, and Mia was small enough to believe the sky could break. Ella's crying hitched. Her body softened against Mia's chest. Mia kept humming. At the doorway, Dominic went completely still. Not the stillness of danger. The stillness of memory trying to surface from deep water. Mia looked up. What? Dominic's voice came quietly. I have heard that song before. Mia's hand paused on Ella's back. Where? Dominic stared at his daughter, then at Mia. I do not know. Dominic stayed in the nursery doorway long after Mia stopped humming. Ella had fallen asleep again, one small fist curled against Mia's sweater, her face tucked under Mia's chin. The room was dim except for the nightlight near the crib. Rain moved softly against the windows, and somewhere beyond the walls, Lake Pontchartrain breathed in the dark. Mia looked at Dominic over Ella's curls. You really know that song. His eyes were on the child, but his mind was somewhere else. I know the shape of it, he said. Not the words, not clearly. My grandmother used to hum it when storms scared me. Dominic's gaze lifted to hers. Miriam. Mia nodded. She said songs worked better than promises, because children could feel them before they understood them. Dominic was quiet. That silence had weight now. Not the polished silence he used in public, not the dangerous silence that made men choose their next words carefully. This was different. This was a man standing at the edge of something he could not yet see, afraid the truth might be worse than the dark. Mia looked down at Ella. The child's breathing had settled. Slow, warm, trusting. She was so scared tonight, Mia whispered. She should never have been close enough to danger to know it had a face. Dominic's voice was low, almost flat, but Mia heard what lived underneath it. Rage, shame, fear so deep it had dressed itself as control. "You stopped him," she said. "My men stopped him. You moved her," after she had already been frightened. Mia did not answer. There were no clean words for a thing like that. Dominic stepped into the room slowly, as if one wrong movement might wake the child. He crouched in front of the small bed. The gun was gone now. His sleeves were rolled. His hair was still damp from the rain. He looked less like a king in that moment, and more like a father who had run out of ways to bargain with God. Ella stirred. "Daddy," she mumbled. His face softened so quickly it hurt to see. "I'm here, little star." Her hand moved blindly until it found his finger. She held it even in sleep. Mia watched him bow his head over that tiny hand. For a moment she forgot every warning Piper had given her. She forgot the black cars, the guarded doors, the river contracts, the men who answered when Dominic spoke. Then she remembered all of it at once. That was the trouble with him. The darkness never disappeared. It simply stood beside the tenderness and dared her to choose which one was real. Both were. Dominic looked up. "You should sleep." "So should you." "I will." "No, you won't." His mouth moved faintly. "You are getting comfortable giving me orders. You make it easy. You clearly need them." He looked at Ella, then back at Mia. "I need a great many things I do not deserve." The words entered the room quietly, but they did not leave. Mia felt them settle somewhere behind her ribs. She should have looked away. She did not. Dominic stood. For one breath, neither of them moved. Ella slept between them, small and warm, the living center of everything that had become impossible. Then a sharp tone cut through the house. Not loud. Not a siren. One clean note. The kind that did not ask for attention because it already owned it. Dominic changed before Mia could stand. The tiredness vanished. The grief withdrew. The father remained, but something colder rose around him, old and trained and absolute. He touched the device at his wrist. "Status." Jonah's voice came through the wall speaker. "Outer gate motion." Vehicle approaching without clearance. Mia rose carefully with Ella still in her arms. Dominic looked at her. Bathroom, no windows. She did not argue. Ella woke as Mia carried her across the room. Her eyes opened wide and unfocused, dragged from sleep into fear. "Mama, I've got you, sweetheart." The second tone sounded. Downstairs the house began to move. Not panic, never panic. Locks clicked. Footsteps crossed wood and stone. Low voices passed through radios. Somewhere outside an engine roared too close, then tires screamed against wet gravel. Dominic stood in the nursery doorway with a gun low at his side. Mia had known he carried violence. She had known it in theory, in rumor, in the way rooms bent around him. But seeing the weapon in his hand while Ella clung to her neck made the truth sharp enough to touch. Father, lover, criminal, protector. All of him in one doorway. Dominic's eyes went first to Ella. "Little star." Ella whimpered. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her. The gun stayed pointed at the floor. His other hand touched her cheek with impossible care. "You stay with Mia." "Number." "I know." "Daddy." "I am right outside." Ella shook her head and buried her face in Mia's shoulder. Dominic looked at Mia. "Lock the door. Sit against the wall beside the sink. If anyone but me or Jonah knocks, do not open it." Mia's mouth went dry. "What is happening?" His voice lowered. "Someone wants inside." Another sound came from outside. A heavy impact. The floor trembled beneath Mia's feet. Ella began to cry. Dominic stood. For half a second his eyes met Mia's. There was so much in that look that words would have ruined it. Apology, trust, terror, a promise with teeth. Then he was gone. Mia carried Ella into the bathroom and locked the door. The room was pale tile and soft towels absurdly beautiful for a place to hide. A small wooden stool sat by the sink. A bath toy shaped like a yellow duck waited near the tub, bright and foolish in the dim light. Mia sat on the floor with her back against the wall and pulled Ella into her lap. "You are with me," she whispered. "You are safe with me." Ella's fingers dug into Mia's sweater. "Mama, stay." "I'm staying." Outside, the house answered violence with discipline. Radios cracked low in the hall. A man shouted once, a door slammed. Another impact came from farther away, metal against metal, followed by the ugly grind of something breaking. Rain beat the roof harder now, or maybe Mia only heard it that way because her heart was louder. Ella's crying became small and broken. That was worse than screaming. Mia pressed a kiss to her hair. "Listen to me, baby." Ella shook. Mia began to hum. The melody came without thought. Miriam's lullaby. Soft, slow, swaying. The same tune that had filled a narrow apartment during thunderstorms. The same tune that had told a frightened child the sky could rage and still not take her home. Ella's crying hitched. Mia kept humming. Beyond the bathroom door, footsteps passed fast. Dominic's voice came once through the hall. "Alive. I want him alive." The words chilled Mia to the bone. Not because they were cruel, because she understood what he wanted to do instead. Minutes stretched until time lost its shape. Ella's breathing warmed Mia's neck. Her body slowly stopped fighting the fear. Mia whispered between the notes, the words blending with the song. "I'm here, Daddy is here. Nobody gets to scare you tonight." Then everything went quiet, not peaceful. Quiet. The kind that made Mia hold Ella tighter. A soft knock came at the bathroom door. 3 taps. Dominic's voice followed. "It's me." Mia stood carefully. Ella wrapped around her and unlocked the door. Dominic stood in the nursery breathing hard. Rain darkened his hair. His sleeves were pushed up and there was a dark smear near his wrist that might have been mud or blood. Mia did not ask which. His eyes moved over Ella first, then Mia, counting every visible breath. "What happened?" Mia asked. "Stolen SUV through the outer gate. 2 men armed. They did not reach the house. Are they dead?" "One is. One is breathing." The way he said breathing made Mia's stomach tighten. Ella lifted her head. "Daddy!" Dominic's face changed again. He stepped closer and touched the back of her head. "I'm here." Ella reached for him with one hand but did not leave Mia's arms. Dominic accepted that without flinching. Jonah appeared in the hallway. "Boss?" Dominic turned. Jonah's face was unreadable, which somehow made it worse. The one alive had a burner phone. One saved number. Shell Company traces back to Blackwell Holdings. The name passed through the room like smoke from a gun. Conrad Blackwell. Dominic went still. Mia saw the decision form in him before he spoke. It was not rage exactly. Rage burned hot. This was colder, older. A door inside him closing. He handed Ella's stuffed rabbit from the nursery chair to Mia without looking away from Jonah. "Take the child to Vivian." Mia's grip tightened. "Dominic." He looked at her. The man in front of her was not the one who had remembered her roommate's cereal or listened to Ella say big fish. This was the man New Orleans whispered about. The man who had inherited illegal loyalty. The man who knew how to make fear useful. "Do not," Mia said quietly. Jonah looked at her, then away. Dominic's voice was low. "He sent men to my home. I know. He tried to reach my daughter twice. I know. He killed Celeste. You do not know that yet. I know enough." Mia stepped closer, Ella still in her arms. "If you kill him tonight, he wins." Something flashed in Dominic's eyes. "No, if I kill him tonight, he stops breathing, and everything he buried stays buried with him." Dominic said nothing. The silence was dangerous. Mia lowered her voice. "Celeste deserves truth, not another body hidden in her name." His jaw tightened. "You think truth is enough? Number. Then do not speak to me like it can balance the scales. I'm not trying to balance them. Then what are you doing?" Mia looked down at Ella, whose face was pressed against her shoulder, whose little hand still trembled, even in exhaustion. "I'm trying to make sure your daughter still has a father when this is over." Dominic turned his face away. For 1 second, Mia thought she had lost him to whatever lived in his bloodline. Then Ella whispered half asleep, "Daddy, stay." The words entered him like a wound. Dominic closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked at Jonah. "Secure the prisoner. No one touches him without my order." Jonah nodded. "Yes, boss." Dominic's gaze returned to Mia. The fury was still there. The darkness, too. But he had not stepped into it. Not yet. By morning, the estate smelled of coffee-wet stone and gun oil. Men moved across the grounds in quiet patterns. The broken gate was already being replaced. Tire marks cut black wounds through the gravel drive. One of the stone pillars near the entrance had cracked from the impact. Mia stood at the upstairs window holding a mug she had forgotten to drink from. Behind her, Ella slept in the bed curled around her rabbit. The child had woken twice in the night and both times reached first for Mia, then for Dominic. Each time, Dominic had sat beside the bed until her breathing settled. He had not slept. Neither had Mia. Vivian entered without knocking, carrying a tray with toast eggs and sliced fruit. "You need food." "I'm not hungry." That was not a question. Mia looked at her. "Do you always talk to people like they work for you?" Vivian set the tray down. "Only when they refuse to take care of themselves." Mia's gaze drifted back to the window. "Does this happen often? Men with guns at the gate number. But danger." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "In this house, danger has always known the address. Dominic just became very good at making sure it knocked somewhere else." Mia turned. "And Ella?" Vivian's face softened. "That child was born into grief before she had the lungs to cry properly. Last night was the first time I heard her call for someone and believed they would answer." Mia looked at Ella. Her throat tightened. Vivian followed her gaze. "You are wondering whether staying helps her or hurts her." Mia did not answer. Vivian picked up a folded napkin and placed it beside the plate. "Both can be true. That is what makes love inconvenient." Before Mia could respond, Dominic appeared in the doorway. He looked carved from sleeplessness. "We found Lauren Finch." Mia's hand stilled on the mug. "Who is that?" "A retired nurse. Worked at St. Agnes with Miriam." Mia stepped away from the window. "And?" She agreed to speak. "Only to you. Lorraine Finch lived in a small house outside Metairie with 3 locks on the door and curtains drawn in the middle of the day. Jonah drove. Dominic sat in the back with Mia silent. As the city thinned into wet roads, gas stations, oak trees, and low houses with storm shutters. Mia watched his hands. They rested still on his knees, but the stillness felt forced. At Lorraine's house, a camera watched them from above the porch. The door opened only as far as the chain allowed. Lorraine Finch was old, thin, and sharp-eyed. Her white hair was pinned at the back of her head, and she wore a cardigan buttoned to her throat despite the damp heat. "I said the girl, only she told Dominic." Dominic's voice was calm. "She does not go in alone." Mia looked at him. "Yes, I do." His eyes cut to hers. "Mia, she asked for me. This is not safe." Mia stepped close enough that only he could hear. "You said I deserved the truth. Let me walk toward it." Dominic's face tightened. Then he gave one short nod. "I will be outside the door." "I know." Lorraine removed the chain. The house smelled of dust, lemon cleaner, and old fear. Mia sat on a faded floral couch while Lorraine watched her from an armchair. "You look like Miriam," Lorraine said. Mia's breath caught. "You knew my grandmother." "I worked beside her for 12 years. "Then why did she never mention you?" Lorraine's eyes lowered. "Because after that night, most of us learned silence was safer." Mia pulled Miriam's letter from her bag and handed it over. Lorraine took it with trembling fingers. She read only the first line before her face folded. "She wrote it," Lorraine whispered. God help her, she really wrote it. What happened to Celeste Voss? Lorraine closed her eyes. For a while, Mia heard only the hum of an old refrigerator and rain dripping from the porch roof. Then Lorraine spoke. Mrs. Voss came in calm. Nervous, but calm. She asked every nurse's name. Thanked people. even thanked the girl who dropped a tray in the hall. Rich women were not always kind in that ward, but she was. Mia listened without moving. Dr. Bell changed the medication order after midnight. Miriam questioned it. He told her to stay in her place. She documented everything. After the delivery, Mrs. Voss began to crash. The timing was wrong. The chart was wrong. Miriam knew it. Did Conrad Blackwell come to the hospital? Lorraine's face went pale. He was there before dawn. Not in the room. In the administrator's office. Men like that do not need to raise their voices. People simply begin obeying. Mia's fingers curled into her palm, and Ella, Lorraine, looked at her then. That baby would not stop crying. The room seemed to tilt. What? After Mrs. Voss died, the nursery was chaos. Mr. Voss had not arrived yet. Doctors were shouting. A nurse was crying in the supply room. That little girl screamed until she had no sound left. Mia could barely breathe. Miriam picked her up, Lorraine said. She wrapped her in a hospital blanket and held her right against her chest. She had lavender soap on her hands, peppermint tea in her coat pocket. She hummed that old song she used to hum when the ward got too loud. Mia's eyes burned. Did Ella stop crying? Lorraine nodded, like somebody had turned the storm down. That baby knew safety before she knew anything else. Mia covered her mouth. The truth came gently, which made it hurt more. Ella had not mistaken Mia for Celeste. She had not chosen a stranger out of nowhere. She had remembered the first arms that made terror quiet. Miriam's arms. Mia's scent. Mia's song. Mia's way of holding a child like the world could break and she still would not let go. Lorraine reached for Mia's hand. Your grandmother tried to save Mrs. Voss. When she could not, she saved that baby for one night. Maybe that was enough for the child to remember. Mia cried then, not loudly. Just one hand pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking in a stranger's dim living room while rain tapped at the windows. When Mia stepped back onto the porch, Dominic was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He saw her face and went still. Mia walked down slowly. She knew Mia said. Dominic did not speak. She said my grandmother held Ella after Celeste died. She sang to her. The color did not leave Dominic's face. His control would never allow that. But something in him gave way. Mia's voice broke. That is why Ella knew me. Dominic looked past her toward the closed door. For a moment, he seemed unable to stand inside his own body. Then he whispered, I never knew. Mia stepped closer. No one did. His eyes came back to hers. My daughter spent the first night of her life in your grandmother's arms. Mia nodded. And your wife did not die alone with no one fighting for her. Miriam fought. Dominic turned away fast, but not fast enough. Mia saw the grief hit him. Not clean grief. Not fresh grief. The old kind. The kind that had been locked up so long it came out with rust on it. Back at the estate, Ella ran to Mia the moment she entered the nursery. Mama. Mia knelt and gathered her close. For the first time, the word did not feel like a mistake. It felt like a bridge. Dominic stood in the doorway watching them with eyes that carried too much history. Mia looked at him over Ella's shoulder. She remembers safety, Mia said softly. Dominic's voice was rough. Then we give her more of it. That evening, Dominic met Conrad Blackwell at an old private club near the river. Mia hated the plan, but Dominic had agreed to wear a wire. He had agreed to let the state investigator listen. He had agreed not to kill the man unless there was no other way to walk out alive. Mia waited in a car 2 blocks away with Jonah in the front seat. Her phone sat in her hand. Every minute felt longer than it should. Inside the club, Dominic sat across from Conrad in a room paneled with dark wood and old money. Conrad was silver-haired, smooth, elegant in the way poisonous things sometimes were. He poured whiskey with steady hands. You look tired, Dominic. My daughter was almost taken last night. Conrad's eyebrows lifted with practiced concern. Terrible world. You helped build it. Conrad smiled faintly. So did your father. So did you. Dominic did not touch his drink. Celeste wanted out. The smile thinned. Celeste wanted many things. Soft women often mistake mercy for morality. In the car, Mia heard the words through the small speaker in Jonah's hand. Her stomach turned. Dominic's voice remained calm. She trusted you. She was sentimental. She was family. She was an obstacle. The room went still. Even through the speaker, Mia felt it. Jonah's hand moved toward his phone. Dominic said, "Say that again." Conrad chuckled softly. "You always were your father's son, until she put poetry in your head." Celeste thought she could take what generations built and wash it clean. She was going to ruin everything. You killed her. I corrected a future. Mia's breath stopped. Jonah muttered, "Got him." But then her phone buzzed. Piper. Mia opened the message. Someone broke into the apartment. A second message appeared. They did not steal anything. A third. They left this on your bed. The photo loaded slowly. A hospital bracelet. Tiny. Yellowed. Sealed in plastic. Ella Voss. Newborn. Beneath it was a note written in black ink. She was never yours to save. Mia's blood went cold. Dominic returned to the estate just before midnight. Mia stood in the library holding the bracelet. Ella slept upstairs guarded by 2 men and Vivian, who had stopped asking questions and started making tea. Dominic entered with Jonah behind him. The moment he saw Mia's face, he dismissed everyone. Jonah closed the door. Mia handed him the photo without speaking. Dominic looked at it. Something old and terrible moved through his eyes. "He went to your home." "Yes." His voice became deadly calm. "I am done waiting." Mia stepped between him and the door. "Then don't wait." Dominic looked at her. "But choose," she said. "Choose what? The man who buries Conrad or the father Ella can still trust." His face hardened. "You heard what he said." "I did. He called Celeste an obstacle." "I know. He sent men to my gate. He sent someone into your bedroom." "Yes." "Then do not ask me to be gentle." "I am not asking you to be gentle." Mia moved closer, close enough to see the red at the edges of his sleepless eyes. "I am asking you to be bigger than the world that made you." Dominic breathed once hard. "Mia." Ella learned to speak because she found safety. "Do not teach her that love always ends in blood." The words struck him. He looked towards the ceiling, toward the rooms where his daughters slept. For the first time since Mia had met him, revenge did not look like power on Dominic Voss. It looked like a cage. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, his voice was quiet. "Call the prosecutor." Mia let out the breath she had been holding. Dominic looked down at the photo of the bracelet, then at Miriam's letter lying on the table beside it. His hand curled slowly around the edge of the desk. "He does not get to vanish," he said. "Number. He does not get to buy silence. Number. He does not get to turn my wife into a secret." Mia touched his wrist. "Number." Dominic looked at her hand, then at her face. The fire cracked softly behind them. Rain moved over the windows. Above them, Ella slept beneath a roof that had almost become a battlefield. Dominic turned his hand and caught Mia's fingers in his. Not as a command, not as a claim, as if he was holding on to the last thing keeping him human. Then, from the baby monitor on the table, Ella's sleepy voice whispered through the static. "Mama, stay." Mia looked toward the sound. Dominic's hand tightened around hers. "I'm staying," she said. And this time she knew Dominic heard the promise too. By dawn the rain had stopped, but the lake still sounded angry. Mia sat at the long kitchen table with Miriam's letter spread in front of her, the newborn bracelet sealed in plastic beside it, and a cup of coffee going cold between her hands. The house moved quietly around her. Men came and went through side doors. Phones rang in other rooms and stopped after one clipped word. Somewhere upstairs, Ella slept under Vivian's watch, tucked beneath a blanket with her rabbit pressed under her chin. Dominic stood near the window speaking into his phone. He had not changed clothes. His shirt was wrinkled. His jaw was dark with stubble. The man looked like he had been carved down to the bone overnight, leaving only will grief and something Mia had not seen clearly until now. Restraint. It cost him. She could see that. Every muscle in him wanted to hunt Conrad Blackwell down and end the story in a room with no witnesses. But he did not leave the house. He did not send Jonah with a quiet order. He stood in the gray morning light and gave names, dates, account numbers, locations, and access codes to a prosecutor he did not trust. Mia watched him turn his fury into evidence. That frightened her less than the violence would have, but it hurt more, because this was harder for him. Dominic ended the call and placed the phone on the counter. Mia looked up. Did he believe you? Number. Then why did you call him? Because he hates me enough to check everything twice. Mia almost smiled, but she was too tired. That is your idea of trust. That is my idea of usefulness. He crossed the kitchen and sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them touched the letter. Neither of them touched the bracelet. The morning light reached the table slowly. Mia traced the edge of Miriam's handwriting with one finger. My grandmother probably thought no one would ever read this. Dominic's voice was quiet. She was wrong. Mia swallowed. She spent her life telling me to tell the truth even when my voice shook. I never knew hers had been buried. Dominic looked at the letter. It is not buried now. His phone rang again. This time, he did not answer immediately. He looked at Mia first as if asking without words. She nodded. He picked up. Talk. Mia knew from the change in his face that something had shifted. The call lasted less than a minute. When he lowered the phone, his eyes were colder. Dr. Mason Bell is moving. Moving where? Private airstrip outside Baton Rouge. Flight filed under another name. Mia stood. He is running. He is trying. Dominic called Jonah. His voice stayed calm, which made the room feel more dangerous. Bell is not to disappear. Bring him in alive, no mistakes. Mia stepped toward him. Dominic. He looked at her. Alive, he said. You have my word. She believed him. By noon, Dr. Mason Bell was sitting in a federal interview room with a bruise on his cheek and sweat soaking through the collar of his expensive shirt. Dominic did not go inside. That was part of the agreement. He waited behind the glass with Mia Jonah and Assistant United States Attorney Rebecca Shaw, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice that sounded like it had never begged anyone for anything. Bell looked smaller than Mia expected. She had imagined a monster. A man with cold eyes and steady hands. Someone who could look at a dying woman and see only a chart that needed changing. Instead, he looked afraid. That made it worse. Rebecca Shaw entered the room carrying a folder. She sat down across from Bell and opened it with slow precision. Mia could not hear everything through the glass until the audio switched on. Rebecca placed a copy of Miriam's letter on the table. Bell stared at it. His mouth trembled before he controlled it. Rebecca said, "You remember Nurse Miriam Hart." Bell looked away. Dominic did not move beside Mia, but the air around him hardened. Rebecca slid another paper forward. Medication log, original copy, not the one entered into the hospital system. We recovered it from a retired administrator's archive. Bell said nothing. Rebecca placed a third page down. Bank transfer through a shell company tied to Conrad Blackwell. 3 days after Celeste Voss died. Bell's breathing changed. Rebecca leaned back. You can keep protecting a man who already tried to leave you on a runway this morning, or you can start telling the truth before he decides you are clean or dead. Bell closed his eyes. For a long moment, the only sound in the observation room was the faint hum of the speaker. Then Bell spoke. I did not mean for her to die. Mia's hands went cold. Dominic's face did not change. Bell wiped his mouth. Blackwell said she was unstable, emotional. He said she was going to destroy contracts, trusts, holdings. He said she was under too much stress and needed to be sedated. I adjusted the medication. Rebecca's voice stayed even. Outside the treatment plan. Bell nodded once. Yes. Against Nurse Hart's objection. Yes. And after Celeste Voss began to hemorrhage. Bell's face broke. The timing was wrong. Her pressure dropped too fast. Miriam knew. She kept saying it was the medication, that the dosage was wrong, that the chart did not match. I told her to get out. Mia pressed a hand to her stomach. Bell stared at the table. Blackwell had the administrator remove her complaint. I changed the chart. I signed after. I thought it was over. Rebecca asked, Did Conrad Blackwell order you to alter the records? Bell whispered yes. Did he know the medication could endanger Celeste Voss? Bell covered his face with both hands. Yes. Mia turned away from the glass. Dominic's hand found her back, lightly, not to steady her because she looked weak, but because he knew standing through truth could feel like falling. She did not move away. Behind the glass, Bell kept talking. Once men like him began saving themselves, they rarely stopped. Names followed. Dates. Payments. A retired administrator, a private account, a nurse threatened into silence. A second letter destroyed. Conrad Blackwell's driver at St. Agnes before dawn. A hospital bracelet taken from the nursery records and kept as insurance. When the interview ended, Mia walked into the hallway and leaned against the wall. Dominic stood beside her. For a while they said nothing. Then Mia whispered Miriam was right. Dominic looked at the floor. Yes, she was right, and they made her feel alone with it. His voice roughened. They made all of us alone with it. Mia looked at him then. Not at the crime lord, not at the powerful man who could make rooms go silent. At the widower, at the father, at the man who had been lied to so thoroughly that grief had become a cage. Dominic said I believed them because I needed a reason I could survive. Mia reached for his hand. He looked at their joined fingers like he did not understand how something so gentle could exist on a day like this. You survived, she said. His eyes lifted to hers. Barely. The arrest happened that evening. Conrad Blackwell was not taken in some dark warehouse, not dragged from a club with blood on his collar, not punished in the private language of men like Dominic. He was arrested outside Gigi's diner in the rain, beneath the same crooked awning where Mia had stood 100 times, waiting for rides she could barely afford. Mia had gone there to tell Gigi she was safe. Dominic had not wanted her out of the estate. Mia had reminded him that protection was not ownership. He had listened. Jonah drove her. 2 cars followed at a distance. She hated that she needed them and was grateful anyway. Gigi hugged her so hard Mia could barely breathe. You look like hell. I missed you too. Gigi pulled back and cupped Mia's face. You eating. Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because you keep looking like a stiff wind could finish the job. Piper arrived 10 minutes later, furious, scared, and carrying a bag full of Mia's clothes from the apartment. She hugged Mia, then slapped her arm. Ow. That is for making me find a baby hospital bracelet on your bed. I did not make you. You joined a mafia grief spiral. That counts. Mia almost laughed. It came out broken. Piper's anger softened. She pulled Mia in again. You scared me. I know. Do not do it again. I cannot promise that. Piper groaned into her shoulder. I hate honest people. Through the diner window, Mia saw the black car pull up. Conrad stepped out with an umbrella. He looked exactly like old money wanted to be remembered. Silver hair, dark coat, clean gloves, a face practiced in sympathy. Jonah moved first, but Mia touched his arm. Number. He looked at her. She opened the diner door and stepped outside before Gigi could stop her. Rain misted her hair. The street shone under red brake lights and neon signs. Conrad smiled as if they were meeting at a charity luncheon. Miss Hart, Mr. Blackwell. Dominic has a habit of collecting wounded things. Mia felt the insult and let it pass through her. You should leave. I was hoping we might speak privately. We are speaking on a public sidewalk. His smile thinned. Smart girl. No, tired girl. Conrad looked toward the diner where Gigi stood behind the glass with a coffee pot in one hand, like it was a weapon. You should have stayed a waitress. Mia's voice stayed steady. You should have stayed away from children. For the first time the charm flickered. Conrad stepped closer. You think you matter because a traumatized child found comfort in you. You think love makes Dominic Voss clean. Mia did not step back. Number. Good, then you are not entirely foolish. I know love does not make him clean, she said. But he is trying to become better than what raised him. You never even tried. Conrad's eyes hardened. Men like Dominic do not change. They only choose prettier reasons to remain monsters. A car door closed behind him. Dominic's voice entered the rain. You always did confuse confession with wisdom. Conrad turned. Dominic stood near the curb, dark coat open, face unreadable. Police lights bloomed red and blue across the wet pavement. Federal agents moved in from both ends of the block. Conrad looked from Dominic to Mia. Then he understood. His mouth curled. "You brought law to a family matter." Dominic stepped closer, stopping just beyond arm's reach. Celeste wanted the truth. Conrad's jaw tightened. "So I am giving it to her," Dominic said. An agent read the charges. Conrad did not fight. Men like him rarely did when cameras could see. He straightened his cuffs while they placed him in handcuffs as if dignity were something he could still arrange. Before they put him in the car, his eyes found Mia. "You have no idea what he is." Mia held his gaze. "I know enough to know what you are." The car door closed. Rain swallowed the sound. Gigi opened the diner door. "Well, she said about time somebody served that man something bitter." Piper laughed first. Mia did not. She stood in the rain watching the taillights vanish and felt no triumph, only release and grief. So much grief. The story broke before sunrise. By morning, every screen in New Orleans seemed to carry Celeste's face. Former physician charged in death of Celeste Voss. Businessman Conrad Blackwell arrested in medical cover-up. Late nurse Miriam Hart named key whistleblower. Mia stood in the estate kitchen staring at a headline on Piper's phone until the words blurred. Miriam's photograph appeared in one article. It was an old hospital badge photo. Her hair was pinned back. Her smile was tired but kind. Mia touched the screen. Piper stood beside her. "She looks like you." Mia shook her head. "I look like her." Dominic entered quietly. Ella was on his hip, still Sleepy Curl's wild rabbit dragging from one hand. Ella reached for Mia. "Mama." The kitchen stilled. Not because the word was shocking anymore, because it was sacred. Mia took her. "Good morning, baby." Ella touched the phone screen. "Nana." Mia's throat closed. Dominic came closer. Mia knelt with Ella in her arms and showed her the photo. "This is Miriam," she said softly. "She was my grandma. She held you when you were very, very small." Ella studied the picture with a seriousness too large for her face. "Safe," Ella whispered. Mia closed her eyes. Dominic turned toward the window. Piper wiped her cheek and pretended she had something in her eye. The days after Conrad's arrest were not clean. Truth never arrived without mud on its shoes. Reporters camped outside the estate gates and Gigi's diner. Men with cameras followed Mia from class until Jonah scared them off without touching anyone. Online strangers called her a hero, a gold digger, a liar, a saint, and worse things that made Piper threaten to throw Mia's phone into the lake. St. Agnes Medical Center released a statement full of sorrow and no responsibility. Rebecca Shaw tore it apart in court filings within 48 hours. Lorraine Finch testified behind closed doors first, then publicly. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not when she spoke Miriam's name. Dr. Mason Bell took a deal and gave everything he had. Conrad pleaded not guilty with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Dominic attended every hearing without speaking to the press. Mia sat beside him when she could. Sometimes she sat with Ella at home instead, because justice could wait on a docket, but a frightened child needed breakfast bedtime and someone to stay when the room went dark. Ella did not heal like a miracle. Some mornings she spoke in bright little bursts. Bird, juice, daddy, Mia, more, book. Other mornings she went quiet again. A slammed door could steal her voice for hours. A strange man in a dark coat could make her hide behind Mia's legs. Rain against the window sometimes woke her crying. Mia learned not to push. Dominic learned too. That was harder for him. He wanted to fix things. Buy specialists, build walls, remove every threat from the map. Mia watched him sit on his hands sometimes, literally, while Ella worked through fear in her own time. One night, Ella woke screaming after a thunderclap shook the windows. Dominic reached the nursery first. Mia arrived seconds later and found him kneeling beside the bed, not touching Ella, only speaking softly. "I am here, little star. Mia is here. You are safe." Ella sobbed, reaching blindly. Mia sat on the bed and opened her arms. Ella crawled into them and pressed her face into Mia's neck. Dominic looked helpless. Mia patted the bed beside her. He hesitated. Then he sat. Together they hummed Miriam's lullaby. Dominic did not know it perfectly. He missed the rhythm twice. Ella noticed and frowned through her tears. No daddy. Mia laughed softly. Dominic looked offended. I'm under pressure. Ella sniffled. Again. So he tried again. This time he got closer. Ella's breathing slowed. Mia looked over the child's head at Dominic. He was watching them both with something unguarded in his face. Not peace. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Weeks passed. Dominic began changing things in ways Mia did not fully understand at first. Men stopped coming to the estate at odd hours. Certain calls were no longer taken in the library. A warehouse manager was fired. A security company was sold. A debt collection operation that everyone knew was legal only on paper was dissolved overnight. One afternoon, Mia found him in his office with stacks of documents spread across the desk. She stood in the doorway. Are you dismantling something or planning a small war? Both depending on who asks. She crossed the room. Dominic. He leaned back, tired. There are pieces of my father's world still tied to mine. I used to tell myself they kept order. And now my daughter speaks. Mia waited. Dominic looked toward the window where the lake flashed silver under afternoon light. I do not want every word she says to be built on fear. Mia felt that sentence settle between them. Are you doing this for me? He looked at her. Number? Good. His mouth moved faintly. I am doing it because Celeste once believed I could become decent, and I am tired of proving her wrong. Mia walked around the desk and touched his shoulder. You were never only one thing. No, he said. But some things weigh more than others. She bent and kissed the top of his head. He closed his eyes. For once, he let himself receive comfort without trying to earn it first. The first time Ella asked about Celeste, they were in the hallway near the staircase. The portrait had always been there. Celeste in a white dress laughing at something outside the frame, one hand resting over her pregnant belly. Ella stopped beneath it and pointed. Mama. Mia froze. Dominic stood halfway down the stairs, one hand on the banister. The house seemed to hold still. Mia knelt beside Ella. Yes, she said gently. That is your first mama. Her name was Celeste. Ella looked at the portrait. Mama gone. Dominic came down the remaining steps slowly. His face was pale beneath its control. Mia said, Yes, baby, she's gone. Ella touched the frame with one small finger. Love me. Dominic made a sound like the question had struck him in the chest. Mia pulled Ella close. All the way, she whispered. She loved you all the way. Ella leaned against Mia. Then she turned and reached for Dominic. He knelt. Ella touched his cheek. Daddy sad. Dominic took her hand and kissed her palm. Yes? Ella looked at Mia. Mia mama. Mia's eyes filled so fast the room blurred. Dominic went completely still. Mia did not answer too quickly. She would not steal the word. She would not smooth over Celeste's place. She would not make love compete with the dead. So she brushed Ella's curls back and said, Only if you want me to be. Ella nodded, once serious and certain. My mama. Dominic turned away, but not before Mia saw the tears in his eyes. That weekend they went to the cemetery. The sky was clear, washed clean after days of rain. Lafayette Cemetery was quiet, its old tombs pale beneath the sun shadows falling across cracked stone and iron gates. Mia carried lavender and a small thermos of peppermint tea. Dominic carried white roses. Ella carried her rabbit and insisted on walking between them. Celeste's tomb stood near the back wall where vines climbed the stone. Dominic placed the roses first. For a long time he said nothing. Mia stayed beside him. She did not fill the silence. Some silences were rooms the dead deserved to keep. Finally Dominic spoke. I know now, he said, voice low. I know what happened. I know you fought. I know I failed you for too long. Wind moved through the cemetery. Ella pressed against his leg. Dominic crouched and lifted her. She knows you loved her, Mia said. Dominic looked at the name carved in stone. I hope so. Mia stepped forward and laid the lavender beside the roses. My grandmother tried to save you, she whispered. Dominic looked at her. Mia took the thermos from her bag and poured a little peppermint tea into the grass beside the tomb. She always said tea gave grief something warm to hold. Dominic's hand found hers. After they left Celeste, they drove to Miriam's grave. Mia had not been there since everything changed. The cemetery was smaller, less grand, with uneven ground and plastic flowers faded by weather. Miriam's stone was simple. Her name, her dates. Beloved grandmother, devoted nurse. Mia knelt and brushed leaves from the base. I found your voice, she whispered. I'm sorry it took so long. Dominic stood behind her with Ella in his arms. After a moment, he stepped forward and placed a white rose on Miriam's grave. She tried to save my wife, he said. Mia looked up. Dominic's voice thickened. She saved my daughter first. Mia bowed her head. The wind moved softly through the grass. Ella reached down, touching the stone. Nana safe. Mia let herself cry then. Not because everything was fixed, because some truths had finally been allowed to breathe. Months later, the lantern house looked different to Mia. The candles still glowed. The glasses still shone. The walls still held the kind of quiet that came from expensive secrets. But the private room no longer felt like the place where her life had been stolen by fate. It felt like a doorway she had survived walking through. Dominic had asked her to dinner there. Mia had narrowed her eyes the moment he said it. If this is some rich man apology dinner, I am leaving before dessert. It is not an apology. That sounds exactly like something an apology would say. He had only smiled. Now she sat across from him in the same private room where Ella had first pointed at her and broken the world open with one word. There were no dangerous men at the table. No whispered deals. No guards inside the room, though Mia knew Jonah was somewhere nearby, pretending not to hover. Ella sat in a chair beside Dominic, wearing a blue dress and holding her velvet rabbit with suspicious seriousness. Mia looked from Ella to Dominic. What did you two do? Ella smiled. Dominic stood. Mia's heart began to pound. Dominic. He came around the table. The candles trembled in the glass. Then Dominic Voss, the man New Orleans had feared for half her life without her knowing it, lowered himself to one knee in front of a waitress who still owned the same worn sneakers from the night they met. He did not start with a ring. He started with the truth. You walked into my life carrying coffee rent notices and more courage than anyone in that room. My daughter recognized safety in you before I understood what safety was. You did not save us by being fearless. You saved us by staying. Mia covered her mouth. Dominic's voice roughened. I love you, Mia Hart. Not because Ella needs you, though she does. Not because I need you, though God help me I do. I love you because you see the worst of me and still ask for the man I can become. Ella leaned forward. Say yes. Mia laughed through tears. You planned this. Dominic glanced at Ella. She was the strategist. Ella nodded proudly. Cake after. Mia wiped her cheek. That explains the urgency. Dominic opened the small velvet box. The ring was beautiful, but not enormous. Not a display. A promise. A slim diamond set between two small blue stones the color of rain-washed sky. Mia looked at him. You understand I am still finishing school. Yes. And I am not quitting work just because you hate my shoes. I have made peace with the shoes. No, you have not. No, he admitted, but I respect their loyalty. She laughed and the sound became a sob. Dominic waited. He did not rush her. Did not assume. Did not turn love into pressure. That was why she knew her answer. Yes, Mia whispered. Ella clapped so hard her rabbit fell to the floor. Dominic slid the ring onto Mia's finger with hands that trembled once, just once. Then he stood and kissed her like the room had gone quiet for a different reason now. Not fear. Not shock. Home. The wedding took place at the Lake Pontchartrain estate in early spring. Not too grand, not too cold. Vivian made sure of that. Gigi threatened the caterer twice and cried into a napkin when she thought no one was looking. Piper gave a speech that began with, "I told her not to marry the scary man," and somehow ended with half the room in tears. Jonah stood near the back pretending he was only there for security, though Ella kept throwing flower petals at his shoes. The lawn sloped toward the lake. Spanish moss moved in the soft wind. White chairs faced a wooden arch covered in roses, lavender, and small sprigs of peppermint tucked between the flowers. 2 chairs in the front row remained empty. One held white roses for Celeste. The other held lavender for Miriam. Mia saw them before she walked down the aisle. Her breath caught. Dominic stood at the front in a dark suit, Ella beside him, in a pale blue dress, gripping his hand with one hand and her rabbit with the other. When Ella saw Mia, her face lit up. "Mama." The word carried across the lawn. People turned, but this time the word did not freeze the room. It warmed it. Mia walked toward them with tears in her eyes, and the lake shining behind the man she loved. During the vows, Dominic's voice stayed steady until he said Celeste's name. Then it broke. Mia reached for his hand, and he kept going. He promised not perfection because neither of them believed in fairy tales that clean. He promised truth. He promised choice. He promised to keep becoming a man his daughter could trust. When Mia spoke, she looked at Dominic, then at Ella. "I used to think home was the place you went when the world became too much. Then I learned home can also be the people who do not leave when the world becomes too much. I choose you. I choose Ella. I choose the truth that brought us here, even the parts that hurt." Ella tugged Dominic's sleeve. "My turn." Soft laughter moved through the guests. Dominic crouched. Ella looked at Mia with grave concentration. "Mama, stay." Mia knelt in front of her wedding dress, pooling in the grass. "I'm staying." Ella touched her face. "Always." Mia smiled through tears. "Always." Years later, people in New Orleans still told stories about Dominic Voss. Some were true. Some were not. Some were old enough to belong to men who were gone, and sins that had already found their graves. But there were other stories now. A child trauma center opened near the river, funded in the names of Celeste Voss and Miriam Hart. Its walls were painted in warm colors. Its rooms had soft chairs, books, therapy toys, and windows full of light. Nurses were trained to speak up. Mothers were listened to. Children were given time, rhythm, safety, and words when they were ready. Near the entrance, engraved in simple letters, was a sentence Mia had once written in the margin of a notebook. Children recognize safety before words. On the day the center opened, Ella ran across the lawn with her curls loose, laughing, as Jonah pretended not to let her win a race. Piper took photos. Gigi complained that the coffee was terrible and drank 3 cups anyway. Vivian stood beside the doorway, pretending she had not organized every detail down to the last flower. Dominic stood next to Mia at the edge of the crowd. He was still not a simple man. Love had not made him harmless. Truth had not erased the past. Grief still visited. Some nights it sat at the foot of the bed and waited for one of them to wake. But the house no longer belonged to silence. Ella had filled it with words. Daddy. Mama. Again. Home. Stay. Mia looked at Dominic. He was watching Ella laugh, sunlight catching the silver at his temples. "She is happy," Mia said. Dominic nodded. "Yes. You sound surprised." "I am grateful." Mia slipped her hand into his. Across the lawn, Ella turned and waved both arms. "Mama, come." Mia laughed and started toward her. Dominic followed. The lake held the afternoon light. The city breathed beyond the trees. The dead were not forgotten. The living were not untouched. And the little girl who once had no words now had a whole life full of them. One word had started everything, but staying was what changed it.